Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. Hope everybody is having a great start to your weekend. Whatever you have planned this weekend, I know that a lot of you are going to celebrate Memorial Day. And whatever you do, enjoy your family, enjoy your loved ones. Tell your family you love them. Tell your family that they matter. Spend quality time. Don't take anything for granted. With that being said, look, I'm going to talk to you about something I think that is a powerful message. Sort of kind of fell in my lap, and immediately the light bulb went on, and my mind starts to go 100 miles an hour. Anyone who has ever worked with me will tell you probably one of the things that I am most gifted at is taking ideas and putting them on steroids. I can take a small idea. That's what I do with my clients a lot is they'll present a plan and say, hey, this is what I want to do. And by the time they finish telling me, I've taken it and put so much more into it and expanded the idea, the thought. And they're going, well, I never thought about that, but wow. And then we go out and we go get it. But this thing dropped on me and it started going. I started looking at all the different ways that it plays out, not just in this one arena, but all over. And I had to talk to you guys about it. Before I get started, I want to um, remind you that we are in the middle of a fundraiser for Black Men Lead Rite of Passage Initiative and all of the wraparound services we provide as well in the community. If you go to the description box, at the top of the description box, wherever you're watching this video, you will see a link that will allow you to support our work. Or if you're one of the people who prefer to give through Cash App, our organization's Cash App account handle is there as well. Let's move on. Somebody shared a link with me of a podcast where there are a number of Black brothers talking about the Black community and talking about wealth and talking about a bunch of different things within the community. And Tank, R&B singer Tank, was there. And he had a very profound take on the music industry. But when he gave his take on the music industry, he basically opened up an entire concept and idea of how things work, something I've been saying for years and something that I really want to get a point home on because it's so important. It's one of the reasons we're losing, and I'm going to talk to you about that. But what he said was, he talked about Sam Smith and Sam Smith's hit back in the day, Stay With Me, and how Sam Smith drops this and it goes #1 all over the world. It's got major bandwidth. It's getting all the kind of playtime. And then he says, if I take the same song and I sing it, I'm going to get minimum bandwidth. I'm going to get minimal exposure. I'm going to get minimal chart influence. And he says it's not because one artist is more talented than the other. It's that they are literally controlling the bandwidth of certain music, certain types with certain people. He said, it's not our violence that is a threat. And I add in parentheses to the power system. He says it's our love. The idea of a Black man saying, I'm going to stay with my family, stay with me, I'm going to stay with my family, I'm going to love on my family, I'm going to be a part of my family, I'm going to influence my family, I'm going to be in the home is a problem. And so that's why your major money makers are people who are promoting violence in music, your people who are promoting drugs in music, people who are promoting misogyny in music. You're going to find that your major money makers, the ones who are at the top of the charts, the ones who gets all the exposure, are the ones who are perpetuating a negative stereotype about Blacks that does not bode well for the future of Blacks. When you start talking about Black love, I'm not talking about some of the grind and riff stuff about sex. Sex isn't love. Sex is an element, a component with love when it's in its proper context. But sex isn't love, is this place that you go where you are committed to something at a level that you're willing to make sacrifices to ensure that this thing is okay, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your family, whether it's your children, whether it's your community, whether it's your race. Love is that thing that draws something out of you that's bigger than you. Love is that thing that makes you willing to make sacrifices, makes you willing to put your life on the line. See, Malcolm had love, Marcus had love, Martin had love, Medgar had love. and it's been others. Dr. John Howard Clark had love. Francis Cress Welsing had love. I can go on and on about the people that were influential in my life because they had love for our people. They weren't always popular, they weren't always liked, but they came and they challenged us to live at a place and understand how things work. Let me talk to you about how things work. Now, you've heard me say this before, and I'm gonna need to make this point in order so that you can understand why the point that Tank made is so important and how we must understand it in order to better ourselves and move accordingly. Look, the nation of Zambia, I want to say, got its independence in 1957, if I'm not mistaken. It became an independent nation. It is, despite all of its material and mineral wealth, it has a large store of copper, and copper is an extremely necessary mineral, and so copper is in plenty, but Zambia's government didn't have the expertise or the means or the understanding or the awareness of how things work to properly manage the mines. So an outside company, and I don't need to tell you who owned the company, comes to them and says, we will manage it and we will pay you $25 million for the right to manage and profit from this mine. We'll give you 25 million for that right in basically buying the rights to the mines. And we'll give you 5% of the revenue afterwards. Now, they don't pay them up front. They don't pay them up front. They actually make a deal that they're going to pay them over time. They start mining the copper. They make $75 million in 90 days. They pay them the 25 million they owe them. Now they have ownership to it. And this is a country that needed that revenue in all that it could do to sit up. They have poverty. They have people starving. They have a high HIV population. They have so many things, but they didn't understand how things work. And again, someone took advantage of them. Someone manipulated them. Someone took what could have been the answer to the problem. That's why you see nations that are getting it, the Ghanas and the Gambias and so many more are starting to lock out outsiders from mining on their property, mining in their country, excuse me, is because they're starting to understand how things work. That's why Muammar Gaddafi was actually killed, because he had an understanding of how things work, and he was going to use the minerals, primarily gold of the continent of Africa, to underwrite a new currency. And that underwriting of a currency backed by a hard asset like gold was going to make problems for the euro and the US dollar. And so, hey, there we go. But that's understanding how things work. Well, here we are in the US, and we have all kind of problems in academics and education, in banking and finance, in home ownership and business development, in mass incarceration, in serial forced displacement by way of gentrification, urban renewal, benign neglect, and redlining. There are so many other places. We're hovering. The median income for a Black home is $37,000. Somewhere along 37,000. And I could be a little bit off, but I know that the median income for Black man is 44,000, and right under that, like 42,000 or so is Black women. Black women are the closest to their male counterparts in earning across the spectrum. And that also is not by accident. And I'll get into that at other times, but you have to understand how things work. Why? Because it's in the working and in the details that you're being screwed, that you're being misled, that you're being mishandled, and that you put, okay, so we go back to what Tank said. You would think that the violence in the Black community would create a problem, because violence and death would scare them. No, because they understand the numbers. They understand that while Blacks are violent and that poverty can be the engineered poverty within the Black community literally contributes to the violence. They understand that statistically, Blacks aren't a threat to them as much as they are to themselves. They understand that 84% of all white homicides are committed by another white person. They understand that homicide and violence is generally crimes of passion, and normally that deals with proximity. And most of the people who are taking on these violent identities are not living in areas where these white people who are creating these power structures and these strategies live. So they're not a threat. But what they do is they reinforce the stereotype. So what happens is when someone comes along and you see a song like Stay With Me and, you know, all of the love songs and everything like that, and they're out there. There are some beautiful love songs out there, but do they get the play and the intensity in the Black community that the violence does, that the dope dealing does, that the misogyny and the hating of women do? All of the things have a purpose. Why? They're creating a stereotype of an image of a people that is self-destructive, and that image is being perpetuated, and it creates a multitude of problems. The first problem that it creates is an identity crisis within the community. That means we don't really truly know who we are because they're consistently telling us by way of media, and they understand the power of propaganda. They understand that you can be a good people, but if I keep telling you you're a bad people, you'll stop trusting one another. You'll stop loving one another. You'll stop being willing to connect and do work together, which is absolutely necessary for you to achieve the things that you're talking about achieving. So you can talk about it all day, but there are some strategic agendas that have to be in place. There are some behaviors that have to be perpetuated. There are some habitual thought patterns that have to be the thinking of the masses. And we are ensuring that we are bombarding you with things that are diametrically opposed to the very things you desire to do. And because you don't understand how things work, you fall right into the category. Let's go back again and look at what Tank says. Tank says that to sit up and talk about love and staying isn't perpetuating the stereotype that they want. The love is the threat to the power source, not the violence. See, the love calls a man to stand in his space and take care of his progeny. A love causes a man to stand in space and cover and protect his woman. Love causes a woman to see the value of the man that covers her and stands into him and leans. And let me show you something, why there's such a big push to draft Black men out of houses over the last 40 years. Let me tell you what happens. See, a man has certain strengths, but no man is perfect. No man has a persona or an existence that doesn't have weaks. And kinks and weaknesses. But this is what happens. When there's a true connectivity, when the vision is clear, when a man knows where he's going and understand who he is and what he's about, he has a confidence about himself. But he has these weaknesses that concern him. But when he connects with the right woman, she leans into him and covers him in a way that his weaknesses are not exposed to those who would do harm to him or try to stop what he's doing. And then as he grows, she helps him strengthen what was once weak until the thing becomes powerful, and the sinking of their energies and their forces and their drives creates this unbelievable force called synergy. And now we're talking about doing something at an exceptional level that they could not do as individuals, but they want us to think we don't need each other. They want us to think that we're the enemies of one another. They want us to not have a love for one another, because it is the love that creates the threat. Why do you think that slave owners sold off children and sold off men and women who married and procreated? Why? Because they understood that that was a natural instinct inherent in the man, that if he bonded with the child, he would die for the child. You've got to understand what is happening here. Psychologically, they are eons ahead of us in understanding how to manipulate us. They caused the trauma. They never provided any healing for the trauma, and they keep triggering it. They keep triggering it over and over again, because a triggered person cannot think critically. And you're saying, Doc, what do you mean by that? Well, what happens is when you have trauma that is unchecked, when you have trauma that is untreated, what happens is it's a part of your past, but it has not been integrated into your linear timeline. What does that mean? It does not recognize that event as being a past event. It is still a present reality, and anytime they're triggered, they're reliving the event. So the past event remains a present threat. And what happens when you enter into threats in life? You trigger your threat or your stress response, which we call the fight or flight response. What happens then? Well, in order to think critically, you need access to your prefrontal cortex, your prefrontal lobe, or your prefrontal cortex, the front part of the brain, which is responsible for executive function. It's impulse control, keeps you from doing dumb stuff off the cuff. It is rationale and reason. It looks at things in an analytical perspective, and it makes wise decisions based off the information given. It is reason and all these things that make you effective. That's why when you see people being in highly stressful situations, they do stuff that makes absolutely no sense, because the prefrontal cortex requires 30% of your blood flow and your oxygen at any given time to be functioning at its height. When you go into fight or flight mode, you trigger a response that is ancient, that falls back to the beginning of humanity, where you were walking out of your dwelling or your hiding to go out and to bring back things, and there was death lurking around every corner. Anything could kill you. And so you had to have these instincts. The hair would stand up on the back of your head, and you would immediately trigger an adrenaline rush, a cortisol release into your bloodstream, preparing you to what? To either fight or flight. But it also, in this time and age, shuts down the prefrontal cortex. Why? Because the natural response and the original response sends the blood flow to your extremities. Why? Because that's what you run and fight with, your hands and your legs, your hands, arms, and legs. So that's where the blood flow goes. But now what? You can't think. So what? If you're constantly being triggered, what are you doing? Reacting emotionally. You're not responding based off of thought. You're not looking at the reasoning and the makeup and how things work so that you can develop the solutions to problems. Eventually, you so used to getting triggered, you don't think the solutions exist. I had somebody tell me the other day when I was talking about problem solving. They stood up and told me not every problem has a solution. Absolutely untrue. The very nature and definition of the word problem says it has a solution. A problem is simply an equation in life, no matter how drastic, no matter how emphatic, no matter how simplistic or how complex. It is simply an equation. And you have to figure out the rules and how to solve the equation. The problem with blacks is that we don't understand the rules on most of the equations that we're being confronted with. So we become frustrated and we act out. Much like a 3-year-old child throwing a tantrum. I can't understand why I can't have that fourth cupcake. The world is against me. Nothing makes sense, and it's stupid. So I'm just going to fall right out here and throw this tantrum right here. I don't have the capacity, because I don't understand, to know that that would make me sick, and it's not good for my health long term. Mom's looking out for me. Mom probably shouldn't have gave you the first 3, but that's a whole nother thing. I'm just making a point. Look, what Tank said was so powerful. More than that, but he was talking about they're never going to promote on a high level. They're never going to give Black love the bandwidth they give Black hate. They're never going to give Black love the bandwidth they give Black violence. They're never going to give Black love the bandwidth they give illicit drug use and the promotion of sexual promiscuity, because they understand the devastating force of those things in the lives of the people who practice them at great lengths and in great numbers. They understand that as long as they can keep us focused on those things, as long as they can perpetuate the stereotype of a criminalized Black man, inherently violent, they will always have a way, because not only does it mess with my identity as a Black man, it sends a message to the non-Black world that this is who he is. So when a cop shoots him dead unarmed, you don't see him as you see any other unarmed man. You see a dangerous, criminalized person who was probably going to eventually hurt someone anyway. No, he didn't do anything that time. No, he didn't have a weapon that time, but that's what they do. They have weapons and they kill people. It's in their music. It's in their behavior. It's in their tattoos. It's in everything that they perpetuate. It's in their music. It's in everything that we see about them. They're always on the news. And even then, look at how the news is reported. I did a story probably 6 or 7 years ago where a set of 3 teens, 2 sets of 3 teens, or 4, I can't remember, a white, Black, did the same identical thing, grabbed some stuff out of a mall and tried to get away and got busted. The Black boys had their mug shots. on the story. The three white boys had their graduation pictures on the screens. It is a constant media strategy to present us in a certain light. It is a constant media strategy to control the content that we see every day. It's a constant media strategy to manipulate the people who create the content. That's why you got so many people out here who have flipped over and are pushing narratives that are not, who are Black, who are flipped over, who are pushing narratives that do not align with Black empowerment. Why? Because they've been thrown some money. They're getting the big deals. Look at some of the deals that some of these Black sportcasters that love to tap dance for white people have. Some of them have higher paid salaries than athletes. To sit up and attack athletes, to criticize Black athletes, and they always go after the Black ones. That's not an accident. They found somebody that they could pay that will push a narrative, that will place us in a light that's less than who we really are. And if we keep doing it enough, maybe we'll get them to believe it. And a lot of us are, because of what? We don't understand how things work. It is time now for us to start learning how things work. That's one of the reasons I created this channel, over 10 years ago. And yeah, we had to restart because of some bull crap that we had no control over. But I've been doing this, since YouTube really took off. I've been doing this. I remember my first few videos sucking, at least to me, and obviously to one person. I had one freaking subscriber. I remember this, 2011. Had one freaking subscriber. And I'm saying him, it could have been a female, but it's just the way it came across as a guy. His only job was to tell me how horrible my videos were. I think the dude is still on here, because there are times I'll put a video up and it'll only get one thumb down. I'm like, who is the one person who shows up not to like a video that says you can do anything is possible? Who is that one person? Maybe it's still him. But anyway, I've been doing this for long. And the reason I started this wasn't for sensationalism. It wasn't so I can sit up and put a whole bunch of clickbait up and make money off of the revenue. It wasn't anything. I wanted to be a catalyst for change. I wanted to be a source of real, true information. I wanted to be a symbol of what's possible. I wanted to be a person who was laying the foundation and planting seeds. I believe that that's where we have to go. We have to plant seeds. We have to plant seeds that many of us may not live long enough to see come to fruition. I've been saying that for years. One of the biggest problems of an unempowered population of men is that we want instantaneous results so that we can experience what power feels like. We can experience what being recognized and acknowledged feels like. We can experience what being the man feels like, because in so many instances, we go into jobs and we are marginalized, we are discriminated against, we are mishandled, and so much more, that when we get an opportunity to say we're going to do something, we're going for the home run every time. And that's not how you're going to change 400 years of oppression, 246 years of chattel slavery, 12 years of Reconstruction, 10 years of Black codes and convict leasing, 70 years of Jim Crow segregation, and another 55 to 60 years of gentrification, mass incarceration, and miseducation. You're not going to undo that in no quick fix. You're going to have to start planting seeds in these babies. You're going to have to cover these babies. You're going to have to protect these babies. You're going to provide an insulation that doesn't allow them to be exposed to the very things that wants to redefine who they are. It's so important to understand how things work, because they are using the very things you don't understand to destroy you. They are reaching into the home in every chance they get, snatching Black men out of the home in numerous different ways. The creation of animosity. Am I saying that we don't have problems? Am I saying that Black women haven't been hurt by Black men and Black men haven't been hurt by Black women? Absolutely not. Some of us were hurt by our moms. Black men, Black women, some of you were hurt by your dads and your uncles, your brothers, your cousins. Oh, it started early, the distrust and the frustration. And those are elephants in the room that we need to deal with. But we need to deal with those internally. We need to deal with them. We need to be honest about them, and we need to confront the need to heal. But what we cannot do is take something that used to be a strength, the willing to stand in, the willing to be there, the will to be present and influential in the lives of those who are underneath our protection. That has got to become a reality again. We can't do it without it, because if we keep leaving kids uncovered, they will keep being misguided, misled, mishandled, misused. And we will never get a group or a generation that is effective and prepared enough to go out and do the things we say we want. So what does it require? It's going to require men like myself to plant seeds in children that I may not see come to fruition. I may not be here when that 4-year-old, that 5-year-old, that 8-year-old, that 10-year-old becomes 40, and now they are doing the things that I instilled in them, that I taught their parents and their community to instill in them. I may not be, but I have to. I may not be here when the seeds of what I share on this channel daily start to take root and start to sprout up in the lives of people who haven't even watched the first video yet. I may not live to see what that looks like, but I've got to plant. You can't understand how things work and sit quietly. That's why Dr. Claude Anderson has gone so hard. That's why Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen gave all he had and died poor, by the way. That's why John Howard Clark went to the head all the way to the end. That's why Dr. Amos Wilson gave everything he had and died mysteriously. That's why Dr. Khalid Muhammad gave everything he had and died mysteriously. That's why we still have so much to go. That's why Dr. Frances Cress Welsing took everything all the way up into her 80s and was still going. Why? Because there is work to be done. There is an understanding that must be possessed. We must obtain an understanding of how things work if we're going to win. Think about the people in Zambia. The solution to their problem was sitting right under them, but they didn't understand how things work. So they let someone come in who understood how things worked and manipulated and took control of them. Didn't even pay them up front, paid them with money that came from something they already owned. They're doing the same thing here with these record deals. They're going to take a kid who comes from an extremely impoverished community, and they're going to give him an advance of anywhere from 500,000 to 1 to 2 million to start doing this album. But they're going to sit in and they don't care. I don't care how positive he walks in his music. They're going to say, no, we need some more of this. We need some more of that. You need to go back into the studio. You need to give us some of that, or we're not going to ever get this deal done. And then they're going to tell him they're going to want their advance back if he can't get the contract. He can't meet the terms of the contract. So then no matter how positive he wants to be, because he needs the deal, he goes in and he compromises. Then he becomes a part of persona. You look at how many rappers out there rap about stuff that they're not allowing their kids to do. They're pushing stuff on you that their kids will never be exposed to, because that's how they're feeding their kids. That's a very selfish approach, but that's what you're going to get when you don't have solutions and an understanding of how things work in the community. We're supposed to be creating those labels. We're supposed to be creating those opportunities. We're supposed to be controlling our own future in the music industry, in the film industry, and any other media element and component that represents us. We should not be represented by any other medium than those of us who understand what it means to grow up and be Black in this country, what it means to be the descendants of slaves in this country, what it means to be foundationally Black in this country and not have the respect of the country, not have the respect of the people in the country, not be given a fair opportunity, and yet still find a way to rise up. That has to be something that we tell. That has to be a reason that we rise up. That has to be the reason that we're out front. Tank makes a very valid point. They're never going to push Black love over Black violence, because Black violence isn't the threat to them. Black love is. Black love comes with Black unity. Black love comes with a Black understanding and a willingness to connect. Black love comes with the willingness of Black men to stand in and protect those who can't protect themselves. all of a sudden Black love starts to show up in the community in outreach programs. Black love starts to show up in programs that develop and give little boys skills to become business owners and earn a living that allows them to take care of their family. Black love shows up in the way that Black men move in the community to protect young Black girls and Black women and the elderly. It shows up in Black women being willing to lean into men and make sure that their weaknesses aren't exposed to the enemy. If you've ever watched a wolf challenging another wolf and the female wolf is present, she puts her head underneath her neck. She's not cowering. She's protecting what's exposed, his throat. If you go back, and I actually sit down with a couple of my colleagues and looked at these films, you go back to the old 60s films with the protests and these were violent protests. They were sicking dogs on us. They were putting water hoses on us. They were doing a bunch of different things. And there's a point where if you just start to pay attention, Black women were in front of men who were trying to exchange. And I'm not one for putting women on the battlefield, but I was watching the love and the intensity of love and how it makes you react. We weren't harming each other the way we're harming each other now. There's always been problems. We've always had issues. We are a traumatized people. So there are some things we got to work on. But what I'm looking at is how they got us to here. Well, in 1960, when all this was going on, in 1960, 75% of Black children were born into two-parent households. Over the last 45, 50 years, that has dropped and completely flipped to 75% or more being born into single-parent households. And while many have fathers that are still actively engaged, the absence of that masculine energy in that home has implications, has consequences. And we live in a world now where we don't have to honor the obligation in the home. We can simply cite irreconcilable differences and we can walk out the door with the blessings of the court and the blessings of society. But there's a spiritual implication that comes with that. There's a social implication that comes with that. There are things that will happen that will not be good because of it. And so we're talking about responsibility. Everything that you can do that is acceptable legally and socially doesn't mean it's good for you. And we need to understand how things work. How things work is they want us out of the home. They don't want Black love. Black love is the biggest threat they face. And we have a responsibility to preserve it, to enhance it, to intensify it, to engage it, to be administrators of it. We have that responsibility. We need to learn how things work. We need to understand how we must move in those things, how to use problem solving to unwrap and untangle the webs of deception that are in front of us, to understand what we must do to become the people we say we're going to be. We can't leave our children vulnerable. We cannot operate in direct division. Any house divided against itself cannot stand. And we are the house, both Black men and Black women. We are the house. And without our unity, without a coming together and a resolution to the issues and the problems that we have and the true issues we have with one another, we have to be honest about it. And then we've got to deal with it, because let me tell you, they're capitalizing on it. And it's our responsibility as a people to come up with solutions. Empowered women. Another valid point, which tells me there's someone else out there that understands how things work. Under the guise of protecting Black kids, CPS, Child Protective Services, or whatever version you have in your particular state, takes Black children out of the home at a much higher rate than any other race, and they place them in foster care. Well, the first thing that happens is 9 times out of 10 they end up in a situation worse than what they were in. A large number. Marion and I both. For those who don't know who Marion is, that's Marion. That's my wife. Mary and I both have worked with young girls and young women who were sex trafficked, who were human trafficked. And what you will not believe is that the large majority of them were pulled out of the foster care system. They get lost in there. They get hidden in there. They were pulled out of a situation in which things were supposedly dangerous. And there are times when children are in situations in which they need protection. But in most instances, there should be a family member that could come in and take those kids and keep that in the family. But see, that's unity. There's a breaking of the unity. See, you can take the man out of the house, you can take the child out of the house. But let me tell you something. In addition to putting the child in more dangers, let me tell you what happens. If the woman is really truly broken, or the woman is really truly facing some things, they just broke her when they took the kids. They didn't come in and offer help. Now, if there's a psychological evaluation and it is assessed that that woman may be a threat, or that there's somebody in the house that may be a threat, that has to be dealt with. But what could easily be done, and here's the problem you have, what could easily be done is a person can be removed from the house other than the children. The threat should be removed. The problem is a lot of times the threat returns. So it's easy to remove the kids and say, well, they're not there. But the problem is, where are you putting them? There are some great foster parents out there. There are. I know some. But there are a lot of people who are in foster care for the sole purpose of money. Now, when people get involved with something based on money, money moves them. So when someone approaches them about kids that they have and are offering them more money than they make as a foster parent, those kids all of a sudden, and what do? They report them as running away. And they're troubled kids, so nobody's looking for them. There are thousands of them out there missing, never to be seen again, probably not even in the country anymore, or they're being moved around the country, in this network of human trafficking and sex slaves. I'm telling you what I know, because I've actually gone in and rescued more than one, and I've had to counsel way more than that. And so I'm telling you, that's a problem, and we are not protecting that community. See, that's our responsibility. That shouldn't land on any state or government organization. We should be protecting our children. We should be providing a safe space. We should be dealing with any threats in our community, whether they are from outside or inside. There has to be a standard and a code of conduct that governs how we respond to threats to those in our community, especially those who are vulnerable. Our women should be protected. Our children and our elderly should be protected. And with anyone is threatening to them or causes harm to them, they should be dealt with swiftly and decisively. That has to be a part of our makeup, is that people need to start understanding that Black people it's not open season on Black people. Black people need to know it, and everybody else needs to understand it. There has to be an understanding of the dynamic of what it takes to be a truly powerful community. But foster care, you take the kids out of the community, and I'm not done. You take the kids out of the home. It impacts the home first. It impacts the kids, but it also impacts the community. Those future opportunities are gone. The ability to develop them based off of Black experience is pretty much gone. And it goes deeper. Here's the problem. We don't understand, so we don't take action. We trust the very ones who are raping the cupboard to provide solutions and security. That's never going to happen. So what are we going to do? We're going to have to learn how things work. We're going to have to put in the work. It is not, and I'll say this again as I get ready to close, it is not the violence that's an issue with them. That's why that there's nothing being done about violence. If you really want to curtail violence, you can. I told you, I've come up with a program. Why do you think there's no federal funding for this program? You get federal funding for all kinds of programs, but you never see any decline in violence. You never see any decline in the dropout rate. You never see decline in any of these programs. Go check them. And then what they come back and say is, you know, we put X millions of dollars into it, and it didn't work. So we trash it. And then another program comes along a year or two later, and they dump a bunch of money into it. But they've already done the research. They understand they understand that if I want to stop violence among African-American adolescent young adults, I need to socialize them. It's simple. The violence comes from a lack of socialization, which means there's a lack of a sense of identity, a lack of sense of purpose, a lack of sense of self-awareness and where they're headed, what's expected of them, the value in the community. Most of them don't believe they have a place in the community. So why should they value the community? There is an African proverb that says that if the village does not embrace the child will burn it down to feel its warmth. So when you don't treat the children the way they need to be treated, when you don't provide them with what they need to be the best that they can be, it comes back and bites you in the behind. And then we sit up and we're frustrated with it because we don't understand how things work. That's why I created Black Men Lead. Why? Because it's a rite of passage initiative. We take them at 4 years old, moving up, and we teach them the principles of manhood. Everything from principle number 1 that says that a Black man never causes harm to a Black woman. Physically, emotionally, psychologically, never. He is the protector. Even when she doesn't know who she is, he's still the protector. And people come to me and talk about, well, you know, she's over there acting like this, so why are you giving her so much respect? I'm not treating her how she's behaving. I'm treating her what she was designed to be. I'm treating her by the way she was designed to be. I'm not going to change who I am because of her not knowing who she is. My character says you respect a female, you care for and cover a female. And not all of them are going to be where you want them to be and behave the way you want them to be. You're not marrying all of them. You're only marrying one. If you're one of the ones that believe in polygamy and other forms of, you know, community type love, that's your thing. But for me, it's a monogamous thing. I have enough keeping up with one. But in that thing, there's a responsibility. That's the person that needs to fit the standard that I have for myself and a woman. Everybody else needs me to be a support for them, to help them. I have women who come to me all the time who need growth, who need healing, who are not in a good place. And it's easy for me if I didn't have a level of humility about understanding where I come from and where my wife comes from, to sit up and say, man, look at you. Yeah, you know. And I mean, I've got one who's was gifted sessions with me. She didn't pay. And every week it's getting through it and trying to get through to her. But I'm never disrespectful. I never talk down to her. Why? Because at some point, her subconscious is asking a question. Why doesn't he talk to me like everybody else? Why am I not a bitch and a hoe to him? Why this? Because I want you to see that there's something out there other than what you've been dealing with. That is not just now. I mean, I ain't marrying you. We can't date or nothing like that, even if I was single. But I don't have to talk down on you to show you that there's something better. I can show you. That's something that's got to be in us to love our people. Because if we are only going to judge our people by where they're at, we're going to develop this superiority complex and think we're better than anybody that hasn't learned as much as us, or isn't doing it financially as good as us, or who can't speak the King's English the same way we do, and all these other ways that we look down on our brothers and sisters without understanding the plight and the road that they've had to travel to be where they are. We have a responsibility beyond now to do better than we're doing, to understand what's happening, and to take the necessary steps to be a catalyst of change in our own community. This is my challenge to you. I'm shutting down. My challenge to you is that we rise up and become what we are capable of becoming by learning and understanding what we should be doing and what they are doing to us and how they're doing it and why it works and what can we do to counter it. And then we need to put in the work. This weekend, we're doing a supercharge on the Black Men Lead fundraiser. We're asking to raise $2,500. Whether we raise it or not, we're going to keep doing the work, but we would really love to have your support. The link is in the description box. You can click the link and give, or you can give through the organization's Cash App account. The Cash App handle is also in the description box. But this is what I can tell you. Man, when I heard that it was like a 2-minute clip and Tank was just really just laying it down. And the truth of the matter is they are never going to invest in Black love because Black love is a threat. That is the truth. So then who must invest in Black love? Black people. We must understand that it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to trust. It's not going to be easy to engage because there's a lot of hurt involved, but we've got to heal. That's a lot of what I do. We've got to heal. And in the healing, we will learn to trust. We will learn to care. We will be willing to give of ourselves to something greater than ourselves so that we become the community again, so that we become the village again, so that we become a people that can wield power that we created, that no one can take from us. They took our values, interests, and principles. They robbed us of our names. They robbed us of our spirituality. They robbed us of our familiarity in our home. And they killed the griots. So they robbed us of our history. And then they superimposed and implanted ideologies that served them and worked against us. And we embraced them over time and even at some point began to aspire to walk and live in them. I heard Umar Johnson say one time, regardless of what you think about him, this guy has a brilliant mind. But I heard him say one time that white supremacy is absolutely nothing without Black compliance. And he's absolutely right. The moment that we stop trying to fit into their system and start building our own, their system immediately starts to lose power. That's the force that we have to live with. So again, I'm getting off here. Thank you guys for dropping in. You guys are great. Again, show your love, show your support. The link to show your love and support is in the description box at the top. And you can give by either clicking the link or through Cash App. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have the rest of the weekend. Enjoy yourself. Love on your families. Tell some people you love them. And on that note, I'm out.